morning. Authorities don't know if that's because people cannot check in with loved ones. Meanwhile, electrical crews are working to restore power. NPR's Joel Rose reports it will be a couple of weeks before many customers get it back.
The utility Gulf Power says it's optimistic about restoring electricity to 95% of customers who are ready to take it by October 24th, 2 weeks after the storm made landfall. That includes Panama City and other areas that were battered when Hurricane Michael came ashore last week. Electrical workers across the Panhandle have been working to rebuild infrastructure that was destroyed. The storm snapped electric poles, downed wires, and even brought down high-voltage transmission lines. Joel Rose, NPR News, Miramar Beach, Florida.
President Trump says the suspected murder of prominent Saudi Arabian journalist Jamal Khashoggi is terrible and disgusting. In a CBS interview, he said there would be severe consequences if that's proven to be true. NPR's Jackie Northam says that Saudi Arabia is warning other countries against imposing sanctions over the matter.
The Saudi Foreign Ministry issued a blistering statement. It said it rejects any threats or attempts to undermine the government through what it called political pressures or by repeating false accusations. And, it warned that if any economic sanctions were imposed on the kingdom, then it would respond with what it called greater action. And the statement doesn't actually specify what that action would be. But there are signs that this whole situation is starting to affect Saudi Arabia's economy. On Sunday, the stock market there plunged 7% before rallying slightly.
NPR's Jackie Northam. Harvard University is going on trial today for alleged discrimination against Asian Americans in its admissions policies. From member station WGBH in Boston, Kirk Carapezza reports a decision could have consequences for some other colleges.
Led by conservative legal strategist Edward Blum, the group Students for Fair Admissions is suing Harvard, claiming the university broadly ranks Asian Americans lower on intangibles like courage, kindness, and leadership. Attorney Lee Cheng is with the Asian American Legal Foundation, which is supporting the lawsuit.
Harvard is systematically saying that Asian candidates are not likable and don't have good personalities by orders of magnitude, again, less than candidates of any other ethnic group, which is really nothing but racist.
Harvard denies that charge, saying its admissions process does not discriminate against anybody, and pointing out Asian Americans now account for 23% of all admitted students. For NPR News, I'm Kirk Carapezza in Boston.
You're listening to NPR.
You're listening to NPR on your local public radio station, member-supported Red River Radio. Good morning, I'm Chuck Smith. I hope you're having a marvelous Monday planned ahead. And by the way, keep that umbrella handy because there's about a 60% chance of rain in the forecast today, so we wouldn't want you to get wet. And if you're thinking about, where is that umbrella, have I got a deal for you. If you call in right now at 1-800-552-8502 and make a contribution in support of your local public radio station, you can get a Red River Radio compact umbrella made by Totes. That's at the $120 donation level. And if you'd like to spread out your donation over an installment, it's easy to do, $10 a month over a 12-month period. Either way, we'd appreciate you considering not just staying dry today, but also helping out your local public radio station, member-supported Red River Radio. In the studio with me, Mr. Henry Bernstein. He's a local attorney here in Shreveport. Henry, we appreciate you coming down this early Monday morning to help us out. I know there's probably an easier way to deal with Monday mornings than to come down here and talk on the radio.
No, but since Red River Radio has been something that my wife and I have been involved with, since the mid '80s, and it's important to me. It's a part of our community, and it's an important part. I like, and I'm a user. I'm a consumer of it. I like the news, morning edition, all things considered, and then particularly the Saturday morning programs. And so, to me, this is just my way of making sure that it's there for not only myself, but also everybody in the community to come in and say, folks, we need you to give us a call, 1-800-552-8502, or if you can't get to the phone right now, you can go to redriverradio.org when you can and click on the donate button.
So either way, it's an easy way for you to be a member and to support your local public radio station. So far, we are a little over $83,000, and that's a nice sum. I want to say thank you to everyone who's called in or gone online already and made a contribution. It really means a lot to us to have this kind of support. But we still have few days left in our fall pledge drive, and what we'd like to do right now, looking at the clock and putting on some realistic goals, is in the next 2 hours, wouldn't it be great if we could bump that up a bit? So let's try to reach, say, $88,000 by 9 o'clock, and I think we can do that if we had, if we had, 100 people donate $50.
Sure. That's right. $10 a month.
Easy to do. It's easy to do. So these are workable amounts. And what's the old saying? Many hands make light work.
That's right. And that's why any contribution, no matter how big or small, is important. That's why we ask that you call, make a pledge. It doesn't matter. We've had big pledges, we've had small pledges, but they all add up. They all show us that you are interested in your community radio and making sure that we continue to have the funding to bring this programming to you that you're listening to right now.
Absolutely. And by the way, at the end of the drive, we're going to have a drawing for a Louisiana Boardwalk gift card in the $500 amount. So anyone who makes a call and makes a contribution, your name will be automatically entered into that drawing. So maybe that's a little bit of a nudge. We're going to come back to our news here in just a couple seconds, but as we do, remember, this is your local public radio station, Red River Radio. Give us a call now, won't you?
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Steve Inskeep.
And I'm Rachel Martin. President Trump says the U.S. is trying to figure out exactly who is behind the disappearance and alleged murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The president told 60 Minutes that if the top leadership in Saudi Arabia is responsible, there will be severe punishment. Saudi Arabia continues to deny any involvement and said that if the U.S. imposes sanctions, it will retaliate. This was one subject covered in a wide-ranging interview that aired on CBS last night with President Trump. NPR's White House correspondent Ayesha Rascoe joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning.
So Turkish investigators say Jamal Khashoggi was murdered in their country on the order of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, which would prove very complicated for President Trump, who has sought to develop closer ties with him. Did President Trump in this interview outline what the severe punishment might be if Saudi is proven to have been behind this?
He did not. And what he did do is outline what it will not be. And that is, it will not be any sanctions that limit arms sales or ban arms sales to Saudi Arabia. And he made clear that he felt like that would be economically damaging to the U.S. And therefore, it wouldn't be a good idea to go that route. Some lawmakers have called for that action. But he said that that is not what he plans to do, although he did say that he was very upset by this story and that he said he will take strong action.
And he at least opened the possibility. He said that it could be Saudi Arabia's top leadership, so we just don't know what the consequences of that would be.
Yes.
So this was also, in this interview, the first time the president has really been pressed on climate change since he entered the White House. What did he say? Has his position changed at all?
He said he doesn't think it's a hoax. He famously, before he became president, said it was that he believed climate change was a hoax. He said he doesn't think it's a hoax anymore, but he still doesn't think it's man-made, or it may not be man-made. And he said if the climate is changing, it may change back. He was really pressed on this, why he doesn't believe scientists or believe some of his own scientists. And he said that some scientists have political agendas. And that he would have to figure out what scientists are saying this because he thinks that some may be politically motivated.
And by changing back, presumably he means right now the climate is warming, but it could stop warming at some point?
It seemed to be that way. He seemed to be kind of making the argument that it could be a bit of random in a way, and we don't know what's causing this. That was the argument he was making.
President Trump has had a lot of kind words for North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un as of late. Leslie Stahl, the 60 Minutes anchor, asked him about this. What did he have to say about the current status of that situation?
Well, he had very good words again. And now this came after he made headlines last month saying that he and Kim had fallen in love. And Trump defended that quote, saying it was just a figure of speech. He says he knows that Kim is the head of an extremely oppressive regime, but he argued what's important is that he has a good relationship with him.
I get along with him really well. I have a good energy with him. I have a good chemistry with him. Look at the horrible threats that were made. No more threats. No more threats.
So basically, he's saying that right now we're not seeing nuclear tests, and we're not seeing these verbal threats against the U.S. And so that's what's important, and that's happened because of his good relationship with Kim.
Although there's no evidence that the North has stopped all of its nuclear weapons program.
No, and he said we don't know that. Nobody knows. So he acknowledged that the U.S. is still in the dark on some things.
All right, NPR White House correspondent Ayesha Roscoe. Thanks.
Thank you.
How does it affect your life when your boss takes a political stand? Many people are finding out. Nike CEO Mike Parker approved an ad campaign featuring Colin Kaepernick, the NFL quarterback who protested police shootings of black men. Ed Stack, CEO of Dick's Sporting Goods, pulled assault-style weapons from store shelves. Those are statements directed at consumers, but also influence the way employees feel about their jobs. NPR's Yuki Noguchi reports.
When Levi Strauss CEO Chip Bergh made a corporate donation of $1 million toward preventing gun violence last month, he anticipated an impassioned response.
I knew I was going to get a lot of hate mail. I knew I was going to get threats. I knew my family was going to get threats, and all of that has happened. But somebody's got to have the courage to step up and say something needs to be done.
Some of those emails came from his own employees, who interpreted the move as hostile to gun ownership. He also received support from Levi's employees whose children had been in lockdowns at school because of active shooters.
They may not always agree with every single position or stand that we're taking, but they appreciate the fact that we are willing to dive into these tough issues.
Bergh says activism, from supporting desegregation to LGBT rights, has long been part of the California-based company's history. He says in today's hyper-partisan environment, employees want to know where their leaders stand, and strong values are increasingly part of what job candidates look for in an employer.
If you're in HR or finance or marketing, you can go work anywhere in San Francisco today. We have very intense loyalty to this company, and a big part of the reason we've got that kind of loyalty is this is part of our value proposition.
Aaron Chatterjee is a professor of business and public policy at Duke University. He traces modern CEO activism to 2014, when Apple CEO Tim Cook publicly supported gay rights, and Starbucks then CEO Howard Schultz wrote an open letter about race. That intensified with the election of Donald Trump.
What's changed now is we're more polarized as a society, and it's much more difficult to occupy that middle ground without being drawn into the fight.
Fights that often play out very publicly. Chatterjee says social media amplifies the voices of people who are most passionate about their loyalties, whether it's to a political party, a news source, or a brand. And it's changed business norms by allowing workers and customers to speak directly to CEOs. He says companies that recognize this play up their values to appeal to their core customers, just as political parties do for their base.
A lot of people say, look, it doesn't make sense from a capitalist point of view or a market point of view to get involved in politics. And I think that's actually missing the point.
Corporate identities, in other words, are becoming more partisan.
I think increasingly you're going to see blue brands and red brands.
Melissa Harris runs her own marketing agency in Chicago. She says companies are always competing for more attention.
They come to us asking for language that is more provocative, almost controversial. They want these messages to travel farther.
Of course, many CEOs prefer to avoid politics and controversy altogether. But it can be harder to remain neutral. Experts say staying silent comes with its own downsides because a CEO's position can influence recruitment and retention, especially among younger workers. Leslie Gaines Ross is chief reputation strategist at the public relations firm Weber Shandwick. She says a recent survey showed nearly a third of employees say they feel more engaged and loyal because they agree with their CEO's stances. But it can have the opposite effect among those who disagree.
So I think it's a double-edged sword. And that's probably the hardest part of it, is that there is no playbook anymore for taking a stand.
She says today's CEOs are navigating choppy waters. It's hard to remain silent on issues, yet there are risks and benefits to speaking out. Yuki Noguchi, NPR News, Washington.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel and her supporters took a political hit in elections yesterday in Bavaria. It was called a protest vote by a lot of German political observers, and it was to the benefit of the far-right Alternative for Germany party, which will enter the Bavarian parliament for the first time. The real winner, though, in these elections came as a surprise. Here's NPR's Soraya Sarhadi-Nelson from Berlin.
The big winner in Bavaria on Sunday was the left-leaning, environmentally friendly Green Party, which came in second place. Political observers say the unexpected result showed that the decision by Merkel's conservatives to move further right this past year backfired. Some analysts also predict that Merkel's sister party, the Christian Social Union, or CSU, might now try and partner with the environmentalists to govern Bavaria. The CSU, despite its poor showing, was the highest vote-getter, but lost majority control. Ingolstadt legislator-elect Stefanie Kürten told NPR she has doubts about whether her Green Party would end up in a Bavarian coalition with the Christian conservatives.
If the
CSU can manage it, they'll avoid talking to us at all, and in any event, we won't be part of a coalition just for the sake of governing. She quipped, "I think the opposition bench is pretty comfortable too." Merkel's other coalition partner, the center-left Social Democrats, also suffered a devastating loss in Bavaria, scoring just under 10% of the vote. Party leader Andrea Nahles called the result bitter and blamed the poor performance in Bavaria on squabbling within the Merkel-led government in Berlin. There is talk her Social Democratic Party might pull out of the government, which would likely mean Merkel would have to quit. That prospect is welcomed by Alternative for Germany.
Und wer heute AfD gewählt hat in Bayern.
The far-right group's parliamentary co-chair, Alice Weidel, said the Bavarian vote showed that Merkel must go. As to what the Chancellor's Bavarian sister party plans to do is unclear.
Deshalb kommt es für mich in den nächsten Tagen vor allem darauf an.
German Interior Minister Horst Seehofer, the leader of the CSU, says his party would, quote, draw the necessary consequences from the poor results. Disputes between him and Merkel over how to control Germany's border following the refugee crisis almost led to the collapse of their fragile coalition earlier this year. Soraya Sarhadi-Nelson, NPR News, Berlin.
Later this afternoon on All Things Considered, winning re-election should have been relatively easy for Republican Congressman Duncan Hunter. Now he's under indictment for embezzling campaign cash, and his opponent, a young Latino Palestinian, is making it a close race. You can listen to that story by asking your smart speaker to play NPR or your local member station by name. This is NPR News.
And good morning. You're listening to your local public radio station, member-supported Red River Radio, the voice of the community. I hope you're having a good Monday morning so far. Make sure you have that umbrella handy, though, because there's about a 60% chance of rain in the forecast as a cold front is moving into the area, bringing some of the coldest temperatured air in our area for the first time this fall. So it's a welcome change from what we've been having here lately. It seems to get a little warmer the last couple of weeks, up and down, but finally I think it's going to be a little cooler. In the studio with me this morning is Henry Bernstein. I'm Chuck Smith with Red River Radio News, and we're here to tell you about something that you need to consider. What does it mean to you to have a program like Morning Edition Local News? Do you tune into it each and every day? Well, if so, you've come to understand that it is a commercial-free service. However, it is not a free service. It is brought to you through the courtesy of listener members who call in and make a contribution in support of their local public radio station, and that's what we're asking you to do right now. So please give us a call at 800-552-8502. Got some great volunteers standing by to take your calls. Some folks from the Alpha Epsilon Delta Honor Society here at LSUS. Representative from the Toastmasters is here. And Loblolly 12th Night Revelers, and of course our usual gang of suspects in the back taking your calls, so please give us a call. Henry, we appreciate you coming in this morning to help us out. Henry Bernstein is a local attorney, and what gets you to tune into Red River Radio? What are some of the things you like about it?
Well, it's I'm always interested in new things, and so from that standpoint, the news is always good, the morning edition, all things considered, but I really got hooked on the Saturday morning shows, the different, Wait, Don't Tell Me, Car Talk. I can remember a trip that we were taking that I put Car Talk on, and my wife kind of looked at me and said, "What is this?" And I said, "Well, just give it a try." And before we knew it, she was a fan of Car Talk as well. And so to me, it's radio. It engages you so much because it makes you think. I was on the air the other day, and we were talking about Says You. And I can remember on Monday nights years ago when I would be driving back from Minden, when I play badminton in Minden on Monday nights, and I'd be driving back, and Says You was on Monday nights, and I got to listening to it, and it's like, man, those are tough questions, and the riddles that they pose, and the panel and the contest they have there. And I got to thinking about it and listening to it and got interested in it. So then when it showed up on Saturday morning, it's like, great, I can listen to this, and I just enjoy it.
Well, there's something for everyone on Red River Radio. There's just tons of programs, and if you're not familiar with any of them, well, go to redriverradio.org and check out our schedule, and you'll see all the many different programs we provide, commercial-free, but they are not free programs. So please, go to the phone and give us a call now at 800-552-8502, or go online to redriverradio.org. When you see the donate button near the top of the page, click on that and fill out the form. Either way, there's simple, easy ways for you to be a member and to support your local public radio station. This is Red River Radio, the voice of the community.
Country Andy Barr faces a hard fight for re-election, which President Trump supported with a visit on Saturday. We visited the Town Branch Distillery in Lexington, where bourbon is made in a giant copper still. And we met Eric Gregory of the Kentucky Distillers Association, who described a product rooted in the United States.
The same reasons why we have the world's greatest horses are the same reason we have the world's greatest bourbon. Kentucky sits on a limestone shelf. That limestone shelf filters out the water, takes out all the impurities, and it just became the perfect place to make the world's best whiskey.
How global a business is this?
More and more so now than it ever has been. We export Kentucky bourbon to about 126 countries.
So at this point, if you looked at a percentage of the industry, is the export market a nice little extra?
No, it's getting to the point where it's more than 50% of the bigger players. But in the past 10 years, probably your global sales have been outpacing your domestic sales.
Wow. And just to be clear on that fact, you said for the larger distillers, more than half their market may be overseas.
From distiller to distiller, but yes, I would say their international sales are starting to outpace their domestic sales. In the past 15 to 20 years, the global market has really increased ever since we started with the free trade agreements in the mid-90s.
What were the key free trade agreements that made a difference?
NAFTA and the EU agreements.
So what have people been thinking about here as those free trade agreements have become under threat?
Well, very concerned. A lot of the big players were able to stockpile overseas and kind of hopefully get through a short-term problem. But at the same time, you have distilleries that are starting to look at what happens if this starts to escalate, and that's a point where we don't want to go.
When people game that out, what does that look like? Just you profit a little less, or does the market go away in some cases?
We don't like any of the options on the table. This is a 25% tax increase. Tariffs are taxes, no doubt about it. So you're either going to pass along those costs to consumer, and hopefully you have people that you've converted from Scotch to remain bourbon drinkers, or you take fewer profits back, which means less investment back home here in Kentucky, and we don't like that option either. So there are a lot of different ways out of this, and we don't like any of them.
Stating the obvious, this is a state that voted big for President Trump, has voted for Republicans a lot.
It has.
When you have conversations with people, do you run into people who are having conflicted feelings?
I think we all understand that there are no winners in a trade war, and we didn't ask for this issue. We're kind of caught in the middle of this, so that's where the conflicted feelings are. We don't understand why we're kind of collateral damage. To be honest with you, but I haven't heard it much come up as an issue yet.
You mean an issue like an election issue?
Yeah, it has really come up. I mean, Congressman Barr has been very helpful to us in the past few months. He set up a meeting with Vice President Pence when he came to Kentucky in the spring.
How did the Vice President respond?
He, being from Indiana, he knows what bourbon means to Kentucky.
We'll note for the non-geographically minded, right across the Ohio
Right across
River.
the river, yes. And he told us he understood exactly what this issue could mean for us. Bourbon is a uniquely American spirit. You can't make it anywhere else. You can make it in the United States, but you can't make it overseas and call it bourbon, thanks to 1964.
That's a federal law, right?
It is a federal. In 1964, Congress passed a resolution declaring bourbon to be an indigenous spirit to the United States. Unlike Harley-Davidson, which announced that they could move some production overseas, we can't do that with bourbon. You've got to make it here in America. And if you want to sell it, you better make it in Kentucky.
Beginning of next year, you're going to have a problem with exports if this hasn't been fixed.
Yeah, I think that's when you could